All good. Hit and record.
Excellent.
Okay, let me just make sure I can see everybody. Alrighty, so hi everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rachel. I'm the founder of Accountant She, which is where I am a disruptor in the accounting industry. So I am disrupting what it means to be an accountant, how it feels to have an accountant, and what being an exceptional employer of accountants looks like as well. And so I bring value to my community by creating long and short form content, helping small business owners, helping accountants, and helping people who want to be an accountant through their journey through free, consumable, accessible content along the way. Part of that content is creating free community webinars, just answering all of the small business owner questions that I have along the way. The purpose of this series is to give you guys the information that you have some questions, you have some thoughts, you've maybe Googled to try and find the answers. You're not brave enough to book a sales call with somebody and you just want to look through the curtains and see inside how and when to outsource small business IT. As part of the series, we've done everything from HR advice all the way through to IT, personal branding, and a personal stylist. And so it's all of the small business owner questions that surround all of our businesses and answer the questions that we've all got. And so today, I'm really, really excited to hand you over to my favorite IT person ever, Mr. Andy Steer.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. I'll give you a brief history. Rachel and I have known each other for, I think, probably 5 or 6 years now. And although we operate in very different businesses, actually, we both fit into that category of, oh, do I really need that type of services? So hopefully during this session, I'm not going to bore you with too much detail, but I'm going to look across a broad spectrum of issues to address when you're thinking about IT for your small business. I'm a realist. I know that very few people like IT, but it's one of those things that a little bit of thought early on can save you a whole lot of pain later on. So I'll walk you through what I hope is a little step-by-step guide. And if you're still too nervous at the end of this to book a call, then I'll point you to my YouTube site where there's a bit more detail, but hopefully you'll know me well enough to feel comfortable enough to just book a free call with me. So are you ready for me to start off, Rachel? Okay, here we go. So the question is how and when to outsource your small business IT solutions. And I think this fits into a series of how and when to outsource various small business solutions that you'll need. And the idea is, from my perspective at least, to help you work out how to get in place and manage on an ongoing basis IT systems that will just sit quietly in the background and support you doing what you do best. There are a few in this world who just love tinkering with IT. And for those of you, what I'm about to say may not be that interesting after all, but for most of us, IT is a necessary evil. So let's try and get it right and then forget about it and concentrate on what you do best. So the first thing to say is that business IT isn't like your home tech. A lot of people will start their business with the technology they have around them, their smartphone that they've had for a couple of years, the laptop they use at home, maybe a Dropbox account that you've shared photos with the family for many years. What we don't realize in our day-to-day lives is what goes into the solutions that people like Apple or Google provide when they give you all of these apps on your iPhone or your Android phone that just seem to work and fit your life together. What in effect they're doing is they're doing all of the testing and the trialing to make sure that those apps work properly for you, that they work properly with the iPhone itself, that they can link with the authentication with your fingerprint or your facial recognition or your PIN number, and actually work well together. In business life, we don't get that. There is no magic bucket where you can pop all your apps in and someone makes sure that they all work properly together and that they're safe and secure. That's down to you as a business owner to start to pull together yourself. The risks for a business owner can be far greater than for us personally. I'm talking about the risks of cybercrime, but also the risks of incurring the wrath of the authorities that will somehow govern the business you're in. For all of us, data protection is an umbrella that is relevant to our businesses, but for others in accounting, for example, in other financial services, in law, there are other bodies as well that will be overseeing your activity and applying obligations on you in the way you run your business. And in terms of those obligations, we're going to refer a couple of times probably to data protection obligations. In the UK, it's no longer called GDPR, but we probably all know of it as GDPR. And the obligations to yourself and your business as a director of your business to manage things properly and take appropriate steps to ensure the safety of your own data as well as that of your clients. What all that means is that finding the right pieces for your IT jigsaw for your business really isn't easy. You'll need, of course, to consider the functionality. What do you need your IT to do? We've got email, we've got file storage, we've got other forms of communication. Perhaps we've got video links like we're on now, sharing webinar content. So all of that needs to be thought out as early as possible, because although you may start working for yourself, it won't be long in your journey, I suspect, before you start to interact with other people, either inside or outside of your organization in terms of customers and suppliers, freelancers, or employees. And they all need to be able to interact with you and with each other in a safe and secure way. Security, of course, is a massive consideration these days. Microsoft are now enforcing extra layers of security in some of their products because they just realize how vulnerable we can be without those layers of protection. In a recent announcement, I think they said something like 98% of the breaches, so the intrusions that had happened in Microsoft 365, would have been avoided if multi-factor authentication had been switched on. So it's a really, really serious topic, and it's very easy to ignore it because it's very complicated. The risks are very high. The terminology is very complex, but security is a really important consideration. And data protection, not just from a security perspective, because of course we have obligations to look after our clients' personal data, but also from a managing your obligations in terms of how and where you keep data, how long you keep it for, why you've got it in the first place, who has access to it, and when finally you're going to actually dispose of that data and how you're going to do that safely. That's a very difficult thing to do in your mind, in your head. It's very difficult to remember where you keep your data if it's dispersed across multiple apps. So it's another consideration in piecing together this IT jigsaw for your business. Cost, of course, always plays a factor. I like to be able to think of cost as value, but ultimately as a small business, and especially when you're starting a small business, cost is cost is cost. And if you don't have the money, you can't spend the money. But scalability too, because the last thing you want to do is go through all of this pain of building IT systems and then having to do it again in a year's time when your business has grown a little bit. And we're still having to do it again a year after that when you realize that the solutions you've chosen just aren't scalable. So all of those challenges bring with them risk. It can be extremely expensive to have to redo and rebuild IT systems. It can be extremely disruptive to your business if you have to move all of the data that you've got collected in various places somewhere else because you've rebuilt the system later. And fundamentally, IT can be really frustrating and time consuming, because when it goes wrong, you're going to be spending time fixing your IT rather than doing whatever it is that you want to be doing, whether that's delivering something for a client, preparing a presentation, or even just spending time at home with your family. All of those things are much better activities to spend your time on than trying to fix IT that isn't working properly. Getting it right, on the other hand, is the other side of the coin. If you get it right, it needn't be that painful. It needn't be that complicated. There are relatively straightforward principles to apply that can help you look to the future without incurring huge costs today. And some of those principles, just to give you a heads up, are things like keeping data in as few places as possible. Really what it means in this day and age, unless you really like building IT stuff yourself, is very early on making a choice between Google and Microsoft. Google Workspace, Microsoft 365 are the platforms that for most people will form the basis of a good, solid IT infrastructure going forward. And there's lots of reasons for that. Not all IT related, but mostly around access and user control and user management and securing that environment for you. So at this point, we probably should work out what outsourcing actually means, because so far I've talked about IT. IT support is generally a sort of reactive service where something goes wrong, you've probably pulled your hair out for a couple of hours, a couple of days, or even about 18 months if it relates to your audio playing up a little bit on your laptop. But ultimately, it's a service that experts are there to help you when things go wrong. What it usually doesn't include is any guidance on how to go about everything that I've just talked about in the previous few slides. And that's what IT outsourcing is about. It's about finding an organization that you trust, that have the knowledge and expertise that you don't have, and working with them to make informed choices on how to set up your IT with a view to the future, but without unnecessarily incurring cost or spending a huge amount of time setting it up in the first place. And it's really important that when you're choosing a partner for your outsourcing in your IT, that you have confidence that they've got your interests at heart, because the IT world does have a bit of a dodgy reputation. Most of us are not like that, but be confident that you choose someone who you trust to guide you through some of these things, because from your business perspective, they are going to be crucial to you fulfilling your obligations. And of course, your outsourcing partner should still be able to help you when things go wrong, but it's much more than that. It's giving you that confidence in the platform that you choose and helping you manage and maintain it so that it continues to work for your business. So, when should you outsource? Ideally, you should outsource right at the beginning, almost when you think about what your company name's going to be, whether you're going to have a phone number, whether your website's going to be a traditional website, or you're just going to rely on Facebook or TikTok or any of these other platforms. You really should start to think about IT right at the start, because your obligations from a data protection perspective start the moment you start processing data. So that means the moment you first have your interaction with a customer, or probably before that, the moment you start having interactions with suppliers or accountants or legal professionals. And of course, there's nothing like starting from a nice secure foundation and building. But let's get real. The more likely scenario is that you're going to start your business with whatever you have around. You're going to keep your costs as low as possible by using whatever you have around you to get you up and running until you start making some money. So realistically, it's going to be later on, just when you're already snowed under actually by the numbers of customers building, or when you've not got time to do everything yourself and you start to rely on employees or partners or freelancers. Or potentially the realistic time to do it is when you've actually got enough money to be able to pay for it, because us poor IT outsourcing managed services providers love to do it for because we love you, but we also need to live as well. So that's a realistic element. What I implore people to do is please don't leave it too long. As soon as you are in a position to think about your IT, then please start to think about it, because the longer you leave it, the more complicated it will be to bring you into a nice, neat IT environment, and the more disruptive it will be to your business, just at a time where your business is ready to boom. So let me give you a few hints and tips. When the time is right for you, how do you choose the right outsource partner? I think the most important element is to find a provider who is used to dealing with companies like yours. I don't necessarily mean the industry sector that you're in, but the companies that are sort of a size and behave and interact in the way your organization will interact with its customers and suppliers. A larger business needs very, very different IT to a small business. Small businesses tend to be far more dynamic, they're far more cost conscious, but the complexity is far lower. And if you pick an IT provider who's used to dealing with larger organizations, the chances are they'll be looking to standardize the solutions that they put in place. And that means probably over engineering for your requirements as a small business. So pick a provider that's used to working with small businesses, understands how small businesses operate, understands the flexibility you need, understands the speed at which you need to move, but also understands the level of technology that is appropriate for your business to operate. And then make life as easy as possible for them to give you as good a deal as they can. And that means looking at service levels, because in our business, in the IT world, service levels drive cost. If you say to me, I need a system that will deliver me a result in a millisecond, it's going to cost more than a system that will deliver you a result in 10 minutes. And for most businesses, small businesses, that result in 10 minutes is perfectly adequate. It doesn't prevent you doing your business. It makes my life easier, and it makes it much easier for me to help put a system in place that's appropriate. And the same goes for when things go wrong. In a big corporate world, you get used to hearing things like first response to an issue in 10 minutes and target resolution time for that issue within 1 hour. That's quite tough going, and that drives cost. For most of us, an issue is an issue, but it's not business critical. So if it's not business critical, accept that I can get by with email on my phone until the problem is fixed on my laptop in, let's say, 4 hours or by tomorrow morning. All of these things help me to balance the resourcing and the expertise I need to put in place to support you to a level that doesn't cost the earth. And the realistic example here is we often have discussions with clients who say, I must have 24/7 IT support available because I'm very, very important. You say, yeah, that's fine, but it's going to cost you an extra 3 times what you're paying today. Oh, I don't need it that much. The reality is we all overestimate what we think we need, and it drives cost that in the end we could do without. So just keep an eye on service levels and what you're asking for. Make sure that you get what you need, but don't over ask, because that's what drives additional cost. And then make sure that the provider you're starting to shortlist and feel comfortable with pays enough attention to the security side of things for you. Because I can't overemphasize how important it really is these days. There was a stat released from the National Cybersecurity Centre that the average data breach for a small business in the UK costs them £3,800. But I think that's incorporating a very, very wide bucket of very minor breaches as well. And I think you'll find if you just condensed it on the more significant breaches, that it would cost small business owners more like £30,000 or £40,000 for a data breach. And that would destroy my small business. I would imagine it would destroy many of your small businesses as well. So ask them about how they feel about the basic guidance given by the Information Commissioner, who deals with the data protection requirements, and the National Cybersecurity Centre, who provide guidelines for small businesses. So these minimum layers of security. And if you choose to have a call with me later on, I'll more than happily explain what those minimum levels are to give you a good understanding of the conversations to have. And I mentioned flexibility a little bit earlier on, and flexibility is far more critical for a small business than a large corporate. What you need to make sure, most of these services will be charged on a per user or per device per month support basis. And on top of that, you'll also have costs to maintain licenses for things like your Microsoft products, your Adobe Acrobat, or Adobe PDF generators, your CRM systems, your accounting systems, unless that's all factored into your outsourced accounting charges. You want the flexibility to be able to scale up and down as a small business as to how you're supported. And we've all heard horror stories from the mobile phone industry and the satellite television industry where you're tied in for a 3-year contract. It's also quite prevalent in business IT, particularly telecoms contracts, but also IT contracts. If you feel like you're getting significant savings by signing up to a 12-month or a 36-month contract for IT outsourcing, then feel free to go ahead. My experience is in most of our businesses over that period of time will need to flex up and down to meet the varying requirements of the market. So it's not unusual to be able to pay month by month and have a contractual term of month by month for outsourced IT services. And that's where I would start as a business, at least until you've got a feeling for how stable things are in your environment. And then the last thing really to look for, and you'll do this, I think, naturally, is just find an IT provider who communicates in a language that you understand. A lot of the people in our industry are techies, and a lot of them speak techie, and when they're talking to each other, the techies love speaking techie. But out in the rest of the world, technical language can be confusing and difficult to understand, and quite frankly, off-putting to anyone looking to outsource their IT. So don't feel that you need to sign up and be bamboozled by techie talk. There are providers out there who can speak to you in the language that you understand and translate the important technical stuff into a language that is a business language. Just to prove that it works, there are some names here of some customers that have done exactly what I've been talking to you about. And they're here really to just explain the scale of organizations that it makes sense to outsource for. Sarah Browning at Browning York runs her own business. She's a single director of her own organization. She's been a customer for 4 or 5 years with us now. but she doesn't like IT. She knows she needs to be safe. She doesn't like IT, so we look after her. EE, which is enterprise exchange, scales up and down quite rapidly, depending on how busy their marketplace is at the moment. They provide or they receive grants to provide services to less privileged members of the community. And as those grants are issued, they need to scale up their resources. And then as the grants run out, they need to scale back down until the government issues new grants. So they rely on the flexibility quite a lot. My Cancer, My Choices is a charity based in Berkshire that is actually growing quite rapidly. So they've now got in place a system that allows them to continue to flex up, but in an affordable way. So, everyone's business is different. Everyone needs different things from an outsourcing contract, regardless of what sphere it's in. But there are people out there who will understand your business, will take the time to understand your business, and then tailor appropriate solutions for you. I hope that that's given you a bit of a view, but there will be lots and lots of questions, I'm sure, either now or afterwards, and feel free to feed them through Rachel and her team. But does anyone have any specific questions on what we've covered today?
Yes, can I please ask something? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, good. Okay. So by IT, do you mean only the computers, laptops, telephones, websites? Do you also mean Google advertising, SEO? This is what I find confusing when I talk to IT people. What exactly do you mean? Just if you can explain it very simple to someone who has no idea of IT, hates IT. I got in touch with quite a few companies who are really bombarding me with tech language, which I don't understand. And honestly, I don't have time to learn because I want to concentrate on my own business.
Yeah. Okay. So the way I tend to look at it is core IT, which is the IT that it keeps your business productive. It's not sales generating. It's the core systems that allow your business to run. So it's where you store your data, where you store your employee records, where your email is managed. And then around that, you build other IT systems like your accounting package and your CRM platform and things like MailChimp or other automated list generation and mailing campaigns. And around that, you have your social media platforms that you either manage individually or through a combined platform. The reality is, I've been doing this as Vividly Simple for 7 years now. And I've been in the industry for 35 years now. And I've never seen one organization who can deliver all of that for you.
Okay.
Because it's just too different and too complex. So the approach we take is that we focus on that core infrastructure for you from an IT platform perspective.
I see.
But our advice and guidance for you extends beyond that when we're giving you the information you need to ask questions of a CRM provider or an bulk email platform or an accounting platform, and how you connect these things into your system. Now, accounting is relatively straightforward. With Xero, with QuickBooks, with Sage, they're all recognized. They all publish the interfaces that are available. They all publish their security stance, their data protection policies. Everything is there for you to be able to choose wisely. When it comes to CRM platforms, there are, a multiple times the number of CRM platforms than there are accounting platforms. So it becomes more difficult. But you still have to ask the same questions, and you can still apply an element of due diligence that says, what happens to my customer data when it's sitting on this platform? So everyone asks the obvious questions. Can it send this email? Can it group customers into these segments that I'm interested in? Can it remind me that I need to call a customer? Can it automatically allocate tasks to other people in my organization? All of that is the marketing feature set that the providers want you to absorb. The questions few people ask is, where are you keeping all of the data that's sitting in that CRM system? What access do I have to it? What access do you have to it? What are you prepared to put in place to make sure that it's safe and secure? What's the retention policy if it's not used for X number of days, weeks, years, whatever's appropriate? So those are the levels of question that are important to ask for these systems that might sit around the outside of your IT world. And there become so many potential solutions that we get back to the scenario with the iPhone or the Android phone, and an app for this and an app for that. It's not possible without the scale and the effort that people like Apple and Google put in place to sort of certify, if you like, all of these various platforms. You have to do your own due diligence to work out which ones work best. But the good news is that there are usually a subset to choose from that are tried and tested. And you speak to other small business owners. If you speak to Rachel, I know she's got a great handle on lots of these things. You can reduce the number of choices quite rapidly, quite early on, and then focus your thinking on some things that are tried and tested. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. As this is something which I try to understand for my sake and for the sake of my clients, because they ask questions. And
what business are you in?
I'm an accountant, as Rachel. I follow her on Instagram. I'm much smaller than her, and I specialize with one niche, which is seafarers. I try to grow my business, and quite a few of the seafarers, they start to open limited companies. This is where I have to talk to them about IT solutions for their business. And I just love Rachel's confidence on Instagram. I wish I had it, I don't. She's very inspiring young woman.
She is indeed. I don't know how long you've known her. I've known her quite a long time.
No,
and
I don't know.
Her confidence has grown and blossomed over the time I've known her. So don't give up. Keep at it.
No, I'm not giving up. I started my business by myself 2 years ago, and at the moment I have 120 clients. So I'm getting there slowly. It's just the confidence to put yourself out there and understand that social media is a huge asset to us. And if we have the skill and confidence to do what you're doing is great.
Brilliant. So I don't know if you can see any more questions, Rachel. I'm happy to take them, but if not, I am more than happy to have a call with anybody. There's a link on our website. It's a 45-minute, no obligation, no charge.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to understand a little bit more about individual businesses and do what I can to guide you in the right direction.
Amazing. Yeah, no more questions unless Mariah has any more.
No, I don't. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Andy. It's half IT, half personal. Is it really hard because people generally reach out to you when they're just really stressed and something's broken?
We do get that, yes. And that's the most difficult time for us to help people because we have no background information generally. It's just a big problem. Usually it's a significant problem, and we don't have any tools in place where we might have been monitoring equipment before. We don't have any knowledge of any of the IT systems that a client has. So we need, in that scenario, to really build up our knowledge of the setup quite quickly before we can even start to find where the problem might be. So for us, it's not a great scenario. Puts us under a lot of pressure. For the clients, it takes time, which means money, unfortunately, in this world. So it's something that we try and avoid. Most of our business is with clients who we provide a managed service for, an outsourced IT support service for, which means that we have the opposite. We know them already. We know how their email system interacts with their other systems. We know that they use Xero for their accounts. We know that their users all have multi-factor authentication switched on. You know, that starting from that point of knowledge means that when things go wrong, which they always will in IT, it's almost as if they're designed to go wrong. But they're not, as far as I know. But you know, it's much easier for us then to step in and help, and it's much less emotional for our clients. You know, when your IT goes wrong, it's always at the worst time. You're just about to get on a webinar, or you've got a deadline to deliver a proposal to a client, or you've got a deliverable that's due at 5 o'clock on Friday, and it's now 4:30 on Friday, and your laptop screen's just blue. It's a very stressful time when IT goes wrong. So we try and put ourselves in a position where we can help avoid it, because by monitoring, there are sometimes clues that it might be going wrong soon, but equally importantly, fix it quickly.
And is there anything that people can do if they know long term they don't want to, if they know that long term they want to outsource IT but can't maybe afford to do it at the beginning, is there anything that they can do to help themselves and help you in the future? Like if someone can't afford an accountant at the beginning, there's like definitely things that they could do
to
like make that handover really easy, whether it's like, you know, building a big document that says like, this is how, you know, I use OneDrive, it's window, like, is there anything they can do now?
So the first thing to do is, you're a business, so you need to think like a business, which means you need to buy business tools. And that starts with the laptop or a desktop. Lots of small businesses will start with Windows 11 Home Edition or Family Edition because it's 50 quid cheaper than the Windows 11 Pro version. And on the outside, you can't see any difference. So you think, well, why would I spend more money? On the inside, there is a difference. The capability of that Pro machine may not be relevant to you on day one, but it probably will be relevant to you on day 366. And you don't want to have to go through £100 upgrade process to go to Pro. The Pro versions of software do make a difference as well. Microsoft 365, for example, you can buy a family edition of Microsoft 365, but it won't let you attach your email domain to it. So as a business, you won't be able to use your business email address connected to Microsoft 365. It means that in a year or 18 months' time, you've got to actually open up another Microsoft 365 business tenant. And then you've got to migrate your emails and your data from OneDrive across into the business tenant. And all of this is, you know, effort that is avoidable if you start off with the mentality that there's a reason that these tools of business are labeled business. I may not be able to see it today, but generally it's very relevant. I mentioned Google or Microsoft. That's a really good starting point. If you're starting to think about, where am I going to store everything? Where am I going to get my domain? Think Google or Microsoft, unless you really love messing around with IT. I could save you a whole lot of time. It will boil down to Google or Microsoft. We favour Microsoft mainly because I'm an older generation. Most of our clients are older generation. But also commercially, it usually works out cheaper as well. And when it comes to websites, my advice would be go with WordPress, not Wix. Wix is a really, really easy tool to build a website really, really quickly. But you will come to a point where your business grows that Wix can no longer expand with you. And you can't just swap from Wix to another platform. It means you have to rebuild. And building websites isn't cheap, so you don't want to be spending time or money twice within a relatively short space of time. Yeah. CRMs, I would be careful of the choices you make early on, because they can be a real drain on your resources. Work out what you need a CRM to do and find the most straightforward one that does that for you while you understand what you might want to do in the future. Because some of the larger established platforms that are really designed for larger enterprises, but have come down the ladder in terms of customer sizing, their model is designed to charge you more the more you want to do. And often you end up paying for things that you don't need. What else would I suggest? Keep a backup of everything you do. That's the number of, because small businesses tend to start with the IT that they have around them at home. They tend to build up a volume of data, and then things tend to break, and that data quite often gets lost, or it's put on an external hard drive, and the next thing you know, the kids have filled the external hard drive up with music, and all of your business data is gone because that was the only hard drive available, and they really needed to fill it up with music, or whatever it is that they fill hard drives up with these days. So yeah, keep a backup, and an online backup ideally. I'm sure there are 100 tips, but my mind's gone blank after those.
That's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, so I guess this is where people can find you. Are you on any social media if people just want to follow what you're up to as well?
So I'm exploring social media. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. Find me there personally on LinkedIn. As an organization, we tend not to do too much on other social media platforms. Much as I'd love to be making TikToks and things, it's not me. I'll have to watch yours and enjoy it through watching yours, Rachel. But yeah, LinkedIn would be a platform if you want to get hold of me. Or YouTube is where we're starting to sort of concentrate a lot of our video activity, so that there's a library of interesting things there if people want to go and see it.
Amazing. Alrighty, cool. So if anybody would love to get in touch with Andy, if you're watching this on demand, all of the links to get in touch with Andy will be in the links in the description to this video. And then anybody who is also watching on demand, we will be popping an email into your inbox just with all of the information that you need. And so, Andy, do you have anything else you'd like to add just before I stop recording?
No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having me this morning. It's great to be talking with you again. And I'm more than happy to have a no obligation chat with anybody who just wants guiding in the right direction.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. We are so grateful.